Welcome to Shifting Gears, the show that catapults you back into the driver's seat of your life. Buckle up and prepare to check your mirrors as you shift from autopilot to the exhilarating journey of alignment with your host, Dana S. Diaz, the Power Shifter. Get ready to rev your engines and accelerate towards your true potential.
Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Dana S. Diaz, and I am not in a garage or a shop today, but we are here for shop talk on the last episode with Angel Dash, and that episode was entitled From Fear to Flamekeeper. It was a really interesting episode if you hadn't listened to it, because Angel shared with us her journey from being afraid to really reveal who she truly was, her authentic self, because of the judgment, unfortunately, that would normally be received with that information in the world. And I think that's something that so many of us can resonate with. So it's something I wanted to bring some more attention to in this episode. We are also going to remind you of a bit of Angel's story. And actually the whole reason why I was really excited to have her on is because she lives an unconventional lifestyle that she expected would not be well received in the world. She actually does have a husband and a wife. And that's something that a lot of people may not understand or agree with. But the thing is that we're all entitled to live our life the way we see fit and receive love the way that we want to. And that's something that I so admire about Angel, to be brave, to be who she is and live her life as exactly who she was always meant to be. So I want us all to take a lesson from that. But I want to go a little bit further into all the reasons why we fear being ourselves, because even if you live a so-called conventional lifestyle, you're going to face fears in life about saying something that you believe or expressing your opinion, or it could be even just wearing something that you really like because you're afraid of the judgment. And that's what everything really comes down to, is that judgment. And forgive me if you see me looking down from time to time, because I have so many notes and I don't want to miss a beat here. So when we look at fear, the actual definition of fear is it's an unpleasant emotion that arises from the belief that someone or something is likely to cause pain or present a danger or threat to safety. And that can get to sounding a little dramatic, because there are real fears. There are tangible things in this world that we are afraid of and we have reason to believe. But most of what holds us back from living our life the way we see fit and being our true selves is the emotional or physical threats that we perceive in the world around us. And I want to go into the neuroscience of this, because if you know me, I love the neuroscience, even though I'm not a scientist. I was never good at science in school either, but now I love it. But our brains are wired for survival. They are not wired to make us happy or to make us necessarily even comfortable. They're wired for survival. And I'm talking about like survival back to like evolutionary times, not survival like we need to breathe and eat and, have a microwave to cook a microwave dinner. And I'm talking about actual survival. And when we look at that, safety is integral to that end. So whenever fear is present, even an emotional fear, a perceived fear, think about like a kid having a nightmare. They wake up, or maybe you have those as an adult. You wake up and you're afraid, oh my gosh, this thing was chasing me, or whatever it was that happened in your dream. Your sympathetic nervous system is activated. And the whole reason it's activated is for your survival. It is actually supposed to send hormones into your body and give you strength. Like we see people doing these like superhuman feats in the face of tragedy or crisis. And it's that fight or flight that is induced in our bodies when we're in that situation where there's fear. So you'll have adrenaline run through you, cortisol, that stress hormone. There's all these things happening. And there's a lot of physical symptoms too. Some of them that were listed on basically any site you go on online. trembling. We can see that in people sometimes. Sweating, that's one of mine. I don't know why. I'm an avid sweater when I'm stressed out. Stomach aches, if I get those a lot too. I don't know about anybody else, but especially if I know I'm going into a situation where I'm already having anxiety, I get stomach aches. Racing heart, very common. Tense or stiff muscles. And I know for me and a lot of people, you carry the tension kind of in your shoulders, long term. Shallow breathing. If there's anything else that you experience, go ahead and throw those in the comments, in the chat, and just tell me a little bit about what your experience are with fear and anxiety. But it's interesting because anxiety has this perceived notion, like a kind of a negative connotation tied to it. If you say you have anxiety or you experience anxiety, people look at that as like you have mental health problems. And I am not a doctor, but I'm going to express my opinion because I can, because this is my platform. I look at anxiety and even the fear, the things that arise in us, as sort of our smoke detector in our bodies. It's an inner alarm system that says, okay, something isn't right here. We don't feel good about this. It's that unease. It's your emotional distress manifesting physically to give you what you need. It gives your body what you need to basically get through that situation. And so I don't want anybody to feel any kind of a stigma, at least not here on this platform, because here there's no judgment, there's no shame. It's all safety here. But anxiety, I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's when we ignore those gut instincts and ignore our body's signals that we actually get into trouble, because that's our body telling us something's not right. And I know everybody feels that. It can be even when you meet somebody, you might have no outward external reason for not liking them or feeling like something isn't quite right, but your body senses it. And, that's another form of that, but it's just your body working how it's supposed to. So it's a good thing. But I want to look at the facts here as well. 40 million adults. In the US alone, 40 million adults, which is just under 20% of the population, actually suffer from anxiety and worry that they identify as fear. Fear of what? Fear of other people, of that judgment. And if you've heard me on any other podcast or platform, you have probably heard me say a million times, judgment is what's wrong with this world. And it's really sad because, there are plenty of things in this world to fear. Now, I'm not saying to go get all worried about everything right now, but some of those common fears, which I'm sure everybody can relate to, are death, failure, public speaking. That's a big one. I remember when I was in high school and college, there was always those kids, you'd see them tremble and get nervous. Me, I'm like a doll. You pull the string and I go. Fear of heights, that is one that I have, although you put me in a zip line and I'm good for some reason. Snakes. We actually talked about that with Angel on the last episode. She actually had a fear of snakes and she had a photo shoot and they brought the snake out and it was friendly and wonderful. And if you go to her website, angel-branding Co, and you actually have to spell her name out also. It's -DASH. You will see her holding that snake. It's kind of a salmon color. It's actually a very pretty snake. I would not want to hold a snake, but she did, and she overcame her fear. And that's what we need to do. We have to learn to overcome those. Spiders, that's another big one, which I can't understand unless it's a tarantula, because we're so much bigger than them. Why are we afraid of them? And then enclosed spaces. I don't know if anyone's afraid of enclosed spaces, kind of that claustrophobia. So those are the common fears. And granted, tangible things, I'm trying to read my other notes. It is common to be afraid of those things, but when your fears are not tangible, when it's those emotional things, the fear of the judgment, the fear of what other people will think, the fear of what will they think if I say this, what will they say if I wear that? I even think, I'm a big dancer. I love dancing. And so often when I find myself at a wedding or at some event, they start playing the music. I can't wait. I'm already out there with my shoes off, ready to go, but nobody will dance with me because, I can't dance. Yeah, you can. You can come up and move your body, but people say, "Oh, what will people think?" Or I see people making fun of the people on the dance floor, and I don't understand that. But we all have these fears, and the thing about it is that the threat that our brain perceives doesn't have to be real for that fear to be felt, for that emotion, that fear that we are not safe. And that's why there's that saying that fear, the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real, right? It doesn't have to be true, but we believe that fear is true. We believe it's real and that it really is a threat to our safety. And why is that? Because it goes back again to those evolutionary times, because you wanted to be accepted. It is a basic human need to have connection and to be accepted and to belong to your tribe, so to speak. But back in the beginning of times, belonging to that tribe meant life or death. The tribe, there were the hunters and gatherers and all that. I'm not trying to give you a history lesson, but really, if you were exiled, good luck. You were probably going to die. You didn't have the protection of the tribe. You didn't have the tribe to prepare your meals and to take care of you and shelter you and take care of your kids. So it was a threat to safety. And it's interesting that in modern times, we still have that perceived threat and that need to belong and to be accepted and to conform to the tribe. So it's really interesting to me. But when you look at modern times and the fact that it's a perception thing, statistics are showing, and this is according to a Harvard study, that 90% of our happiness as individuals is determined by our perception of the world. And the biggest predictor, the number one predictor of happiness, is having good relationships with others. So no wonder we conform. No wonder we hide those authentic parts of ourselves and want to conform so that we are accepted and that we belong and we maintain those good relationships. So I just find that all interesting when you add all this to our psyche, and it explains why we do what we do, which is good to understand because then we can undo it if we choose to. But let's look at what are these intangible threats, going back to why we are so afraid to be ourselves. The most common intangible threats is a fear. The first one is a fear of being different. People perceive that being different is being socially undesirable, and that comes with the consequence of being rejected and abandoned and not belonging. And I think we've all felt that in certain situations, and maybe as a theme of life, I will raise my hand to that one. Fear of judgment and exclusion, of course. And it's interesting because 56% of adults claim that they cannot be their authentic selves. They cannot be genuine, or they choose not to. I don't like the word can't, because of judgment and because of fear of exclusion. 56% of adults, and I'm sure there were more, but they were afraid of what people would think if they admitted to that. So I argue that number is probably much higher. And then 58% of American adults are afraid to voice their opinions or their feelings because they are afraid of the shame that they will face with relatives, with loved ones. And I think it's interesting, tomorrow here in the US, it is Thanksgiving, and it's a time that we're supposed to be happy to be with our families. And, when we look at those statistics, 69% of Americans have high conflict with family members. And I think that speaks to how we try so hard to force these relationships with our family when we can't even be ourselves in order to do that. So that's kind of sad, but 58% of Americans fear voicing their opinions and feelings. And I would hope that we don't do that with the people who we know truly love us and that we're safe with. Another interesting statistic is that 40% of adults fear negative judgment and have actually experienced insults of their physical appearance. And I don't know about you, but I think that's kind of, that's not cool. It's just not cool. 37%, here's a good one. 37% of adults admit to changing their behavior depending on who they're with in order to fit in. So that's something, and I would argue that I think more people also would do that, because I think we've all done that. If you know me, I have written 3 books, a memoir trilogy about narcissistic abuse. And we always talk about how narcissists wear masks, but I had a very close friend who's also endured some narcissistic experiences with people. And she made a good point. She said, don't we all wear a mask? And yeah, of course, when I've been at church, I don't talk to the elderly lady in the pew behind me like I talk to, one of my best friends or my husband in the garage. It's a little bit different how we try to present ourselves in a different way. And I would say it's out of respect, but we do hide parts of ourselves from certain people for the reason of presenting in a certain way. So we're all guilty of that. But we do that, this idea that of conforming, we conform, it goes back again to our brain being wired for survival. We conform to keep us safe. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I also would say that there's so many people that walk around really truly feeling like they can't be themselves, and they experience that. They're depressed, or they have low self-esteem or a low sense of self-worth, or they live these lives that don't even feel like their own, because they're trying so hard to conform. Again, going back to Angel's situation, for how long did she try to conform? And, she had a husband, got married, like, society tells us, to have a male-female couple, but she ventured beyond that. Eventually, she got over what people would think of it, even her own family, and did what she felt was right for her. And she and her husband fell in love with another woman, and now there's the 3 of them, and together they're very happy. So who is anybody to judge that? As a very close friend once said to me, what does it matter what form love comes to you in, as long as you have that love? So I think it's a beautiful thing when we can honor who we are and what we truly want for ourselves, despite what other people think and despite what other people believe about how we should be. Because it's not their life, it's ours, and we have the right to decide for ourselves. So real quick, I'm going to just share a little bit about my childhood, and then we will take a quick break. But I know that when I was a little girl, and I shared this in my second book, which was about my childhood, I know that the conforming was really hard for me, because I came out of living with my great grandma, who had come here from Puerto Rico. I rolled my R's because she spoke Spanish to me, and I spoke, a little Spanish, little English, mostly English, but I rolled my R's, and I had the little curly hair. And I just remember my mother always, trying to tell me to stop rolling my R's, and she would put me in like Gap clothes, like we belonged to a country club, when I wanted to wear my Menudo shirt. And don't hate on that, because Ricky Martin was very cute. They were like the original boy band back then. But, the funny thing was that I'd go to school in my Menudo shirt and I'd get made fun of. The kids at school would make fun of me rolling my R's. And it didn't feel good to be made fun of. And it didn't feel good to be the little girl who was different, because she had the curly hair and the Hispanic accent and, the Hispanic last name. So I would actually go home and practice in front of a mirror to not roll my R's. And as an adult, it's interesting that I've had so many people compliment me on my enunciation of English, obviously. But that's because I spent so much of my childhood standing in front of a mirror practicing how to talk so I could sound like all the Caucasian kids at the school. Because there was even a little girl in my class in grade school who was adopted from China, and she was more Caucasian than I was. And I couldn't figure it out, but I wanted to be like all the other kids. I wanted them to like me and to accept me. So, it's interesting how we try so hard to conform, because that's what we're led to believe is the way to be accepted. And then as adults, at least some of us realize, like, wait a second, am I not allowed to be who I really am? Is it okay for me to roll my R's? I mean, I don't anymore, because I tried so hard to change my enunciation, but it's okay if you decide that to just be you. And what a beautiful thing to not live with that, that mask you have to wear in front of people and to worry about what people think, to just be free. It truly is a liberating thing. But we're going to dive a little more into the fear of being ourselves, why we're afraid, and what we can do to undo that fear after this short break from a sponsor. So stay tuned.
This isn't just a class. This is a place where women work at healing. In the Women's Childhood Abuse Healing Workshop, we learn, reflect, and practice real tools that help you go from surviving to truly thriving. You will be supported, seen, and guided every step of the way.
Want to start your own healing journey? Simply scan the QR code to learn more.
Welcome back. Like I said, it was a very short break, but thank you to our sponsor, which is a women's healing workshop that I actually happen to co-lead with the woman you just saw in that video, Lisa Tickle. So thank you, Lisa, for providing that for us. So getting back to this fear of being ourselves, why are people so afraid of being themselves with everybody? The number one reason is our conditioning. I think that we don't realize that our brains are sort of like a computer. And I say this all the time. It's programmed. We are programmed basically from the time we're born and all through our lives. But I mean, psychologically, we have to understand that we are programmed as to what our place is in this world and how we perceive certain roles and what's expected of us by about the age of 7. And that's very, very little if you think about it. If you think about a small child that 7 is a very young age to already have these really firm, concrete beliefs about who you are and what your place and purpose are in this world. They watch the people around them, their parents, their siblings, grandparents, they go to school and see the roles there, and it's all internalized. They absorb that like a sponge, like everything else as well. But it's our family systems. Sometimes it's cultural tendencies or preferences, societal expectations. Oftentimes there's religious influences, political influences possibly, but there are all these layers of what we're supposed to be just piled onto us, what we're supposed to believe, what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to act, what we're supposed to say in every situation in life with every different type of person in life. And if you think about it, that's pretty overwhelming. I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty fascinating that our brains can take all that stuff, and then as we go through life, we're reading, we're interacting, we're experiencing things, and all that keeps piling on to how we behave. Every action, every inaction, every reaction is determined by every single thing we have been exposed to in our life prior to that. And that's a huge thing. I mean, my husband and I always, he might bring something up and I'll always say like, oh, well, that has nothing to do with the now. It never is about what is actually happening in the present. It's that person's perspective based on everything that happened before. And our brains take in, on average, the average brain takes in roughly 11 million stimuli every day. And out of those 11 million stimuli, only about 24, about 24 are pushed through the brain and kind of settle in and take root. And our brains don't like extra effort. They do not like extra work. So you know what our brains do? Our brains take out of that 11 million stimuli, our brains look for things that support what we already believe, what we already know based on our history, which is really screwed up if you think about it. Our brains are kind of working against us there, but it goes back to how we are made to believe that we should conform. Just like I was sharing when I was a little girl, I couldn't be Hispanic. I had to be like all the other Caucasian kids where I was going to school and in the neighborhood in order to be accepted and in order to belong. And when I finally did, and then my mother changed my last name to her husband's last name after she got married, then I had friends. Then I was accepted. Then I was no longer the illegitimate bastard child. I wasn't the Hispanic little girl who rolled her R's and wore the menudo shirt. I was accepted. And that was great. But then I grew up and now I'm like, well, why can't I just be me? And why isn't it okay for people to accept me exactly how I am? And I'm willing to bet that a lot of you listening have felt this in some area of life. So aside from the conditioning and, these dictations about what our roles are and what's expected of us, about our behavior and who we are, we do all these things because that's what keeps us safe. It's what guarantees that we're accepted, that we're loved, and going against that is a risk. That's where, the brain kicks in and says, nope, just keep conforming, keep doing these things because this is what guarantees you a seat at that table. Because if you don't conform, if they kick you off that table and you got to find another place to sit in that lunchroom, you might be that kid eating lunch alone. And nobody wants to be that kid. We might have been that kid, maybe. But the worst part of this, if you're like me, all of these feelings about conforming and belonging and wanting to be accepted, they're exacerbated if you have experienced, any kind of rejection, abandonment, abuse, any kind of trauma like that, particularly in your childhood. And the way I always describe this to people is that you learn when you're in an abusive home or even if you're bullied at school, wherever this, is taking place, if you're mistreated, you learn to be who you have to be in order to survive. And again, surviving sounds very dramatic, but that's what your brain is saying is you have to survive. But that's the brain's way of saying, we just want to lower the risk. We want to lower the risk that you're going to feel pain, whether it's emotionally or physically. We want to lower the risk that your feelings are going to get hurt. We want to, prevent the risk of you having any kind of emotional distress, because then it, you react with physical distress and then that's not fun either. But it's that fear. It goes back to that fear. And everyone fears rejection, right? Again, we are human. We are wired for connection. It is a basic human need. We want to be connected. And that, I think, is really at the core of why we worry about what people think, why we worry about if we say this or if we do that, whether it will be accepted or not accepted by the people who are around us. And it's really sad to me that, especially when it's our biological, like blood-related family or even marital family, that we still have those worries, because you would like to think that, these people are going to, be sort of obligated. I hate to say that word, but, it's your blood family. Shouldn't you be obligated to? But I guess you're not, because at the end of the day, you are allowed to be you and have independent thoughts and live your life according to your terms and not everybody else's. And unfortunately, sometimes it's the family. Again, going back to that statistic with the holidays coming, that 69% of adult Americans experience high conflict with family. Well, that tells you a lot about that, that maybe we can't count on the people, at least not everybody around us, to accept us exactly as who we are. And despite our evolution, this, again, I'm bringing this back up because it's so important just to understand how the body and how the brain understand fear. It goes back to those evolutionary times that rejection meant life or death. In fact, when you have physical reactions to fear, when you have the trembling hands and the sweatiness and the racing heart and, the breaths, start becoming more and more shallow and you have to kind of gulp for air, that's because your body actually feels like it. And they have proven this, in various studies, that feeling even emotional fear, perceived fear, feels like you are being chased by a lion in the jungle, like you are literally fearing for your life. And, even pain, they say, there have been studies done, pain, even emotional pain, is felt as if your heart is actually breaking, as if there is physical pain in your body. So I think we have to be aware of these things, because so often we dismiss what our body is doing as just symptoms of this or that. And we take a pill or, an ibuprofen or a Tums or whatever, and we just wait for it to go away. But we need to start tuning in, because our mind and body are very highly correlated. And it doesn't always have to be a bad thing when you're experiencing these, times of distress, but it's something we definitely want to pay attention to so we can be more in touch with, kind of that self-awareness that we need, and be in touch with what we're really feeling and what we're really thinking, and why, because unraveling the why is what helps us to improve that about ourselves. So going back to why we have a hard time being ourselves and asserting ourselves and expressing our opinions and wearing the thing that we want to wear, but we don't because we're worried about what people will think. It goes back to playing it safe, that conforming. We play it safe so that it ensures our acceptance, but playing it safe hides who we are. It hides our true selves, and it silences our voices, right? It inhibits our full expression of who we are. And what happens then? What is the cost of that? Well, I'm going to tell you, because there's a lot. You pay the price. Low self-esteem and depression are highly prevalent among people that worry about what other people think and fear that judgment. And again, no shame. We've all done it, or we all still do it to some extent. But when you don't honor what you want and need, when everybody else's needs matter more than you do, even their need to just be right or to control, basically, in a strange way, how you act and how you react and what you say and do, that is giving them control over your life. And so no wonder you feel depressed. I mean, I've said it a million times as well that, suppression becomes depression. You suppress your feelings, you're going to be depressed, because we all want to feel seen. We want to feel valued. We want to feel heard and understood, right? But if we're not able to express our feelings, or if we tell ourselves that we're not able to express our true feelings and express ourselves even by what we wear, or, doing our hair pink or purple or whatever it is, that's going to lead to depression. Because if you can't be who you are, it's easy to fall into that sadness about why you can't. Playing it safe and conforming also lead to chasing constant approval, right? That if you are not honoring what you want and need, and not honoring your thoughts and your self-expression, not being authentic, you are chasing approval. You want other people to validate you so that you feel that you are accepted and that you belong. And that's fine. Again, have all done it, no shame. But you turn into a people pleaser, right? Doesn't matter what I want or need. It only matters what you want. How will you be happy with me? And it's great if other people are happy with you, but I would argue about what kind of people wouldn't be happy if you were truly who you are, if they really cared about you. Just something to think about. Imposter syndrome, that's another cost. If you don't know what that is, I invite you to do a search on it. It's something a lot of people go through. It's a conflict between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be, or, sort of like how you present. It's sort of like feeling like you're duplicitous, that you really are this way, but you're presenting to the world in this way. So who are you really? It starts to kind of muck up your head about who you identify as well. But that is a serious thing that, I think would invite you, hopefully, to think about who you truly are, and whether it's really worth suppressing that person, that authentic, genuine part of you, to be who other people need you to be. Because, again, if they truly care about you and love you and accept you, it shouldn't matter. They should love you, not some fake version of you that you're presenting just to get that acceptance and approval. And then the last thing, and I think that this is probably the one thing that anybody that has ever done any kind of, and I'm guilty of it, believe me, the people pleasing, the imposter syndrome, the chasing approval, the resentment. You get angry, you get hurt and bitter and upset that you can't be yourself, or that you make the decision to put everybody else's needs and wants before your own, that it basically builds up in you. And that resentment damages relationships. It damages every dynamic. It makes you irritable, crabby. You lash out, maybe. We talk about, there's this term reactive abuse, which I honestly don't like, but if you understand what that is, same thing. And it turns you into, the way I've always said it, it kind of turns you into somebody that you're not, but you feel like you have to stand up for yourself. It's like your self-respect erupting out of you in a way that's really not healthy for you or the other person that you're in that relationship with. So then how do you move past the fear of the judgment and the exclusion and not belonging and all that stuff so that you can just be yourself? Well, this is a long process. I will go through a number of the steps, just to kind of get the gears moving in your head. We're going to do that after this short break, is kind of delve into how do we move past the fear of being ourselves without having to endure the judgment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break.
This isn't just a class. This is a place where women work at healing. In the Women's Childhood Abuse Healing Workshop, we learn, reflect, and practice real tools that help you go from surviving to truly thriving. You will be supported, seen, and guided every step of the way.
Want to start your own healing journey? Simply scan the QR code to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, another short break, and thank you to our sponsor, the Healing Workshop for Women. And I hope that if you didn't catch that QR code, you can direct message me on any of the social media platforms, and I will get you that link to check that workshop out for yourself. So we were just talking about how then, if we are one of these people that are afraid to really express who we are and live our lives the way we feel that we would like to, even though other people may not agree or have an opinion about it, how do we move past that? Well, I'm going to start your wheels rolling in your head. So the first thing you have to do, and I think this is essential in any kind of self-improvement, is self-awareness. You have to honestly understand who you are and why you do the things you do and why you behave the way you behave, in order to really get in there and kind of do a little tuning up and see what exactly needs to be adjusted for you to live the life that you want and be the person that you truly are. So I always say the best way to really figure out who you really are, because so many people get lost in life. If you ask them who they are, they say, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm not making fun. I feel like I'm mocking. And I mean, I've done it too, but that drives me crazy. Because yeah, I'm a mom too, but that doesn't define my existence. Yes, I'm a wife. That does not define my existence. Who you are, it's a multitude of things, but we'll get into that in a second. But the self-awareness is figuring out who that is. Who is that person? Who Dana is different than who you are. And it's different from who Bob is and who Kathy is and whoever. We are all unique and different. And that's the beautiful thing about this world. But we can't all walk around saying, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a whatever. It gets exhausting. Those are roles you are playing. And we all wear those different hats in life, and that's okay. But there is somebody deep down in there, that real you, that authentic self, that deserves some acknowledgement and deserves their own title, so to speak. So being honest with yourself about who you are and why you hide that person, why you hide your true nature. We've talked about it in a multitude of reasons, because, mom doesn't, believe in non-conventional lifestyles, because, grandpa doesn't understand why people have same-sex relationships, or, Uncle Bob doesn't know how you can have 5 dogs living in your house. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head, but why is that so bothersome to us? Why do we care so much about why people think anything, that so much so that it inhibits us for being who we truly are? So self-awareness, figure out who you are and really get into that and why you behave the way you behave. The second thing is having compassion for yourself. I think that this is something that, whether you have any, issues that you're trying to improve about yourself or not, I think one of the most amazing things we can give ourselves is self-compassion, to give ourselves that grace that, you know what, I'm a human being. I'm going to make mistakes. I've made many already. I'm going to continue to make them. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still evolving. Very few people come right out of the gate and get everything right, right? We are all just trying to make sense of this muck of life. And as we go through it, depending on the context of every situation and the dynamics of every relationship we have in every one of those situations, we may not always present the best selves. We may not always make the right decisions or the best choices, or, exhibit the best and most healthy coping mechanisms and so forth. Give yourself that grace to say, that's part of the human experience. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to screw up, but I'm going to win too. There's going to be a lot of struggles and I'm going to have to reapproach situations, but there are going to be those times when I do get it right. And I can say, good job, girl. Give yourself that credit, but give yourself that compassion, because I think a lot of where this fear is of the judgment, and we see it all over. You go on social media, you make a post, there's always some jackass, forgive my language, but there's always some jackass that has to make some comments like, oh, you spelled that word wrong, or, they have to completely negate whatever you said in your post or whatever. And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you have to get to the point to where you understand that, assuming that it's ethical and moral and legal, that you should be able to express yourself, however you would like, without letting other people's judgment of that bother you to the point where you shut down and remove yourself from that. So have that compassion. And I always go back to the humanity of it. You can't control other people. We are all human, but we're not all in the same place in life. We all have not had the same experiences. We all have not done, maybe the same level of inner work to come to some place of peace, or even the same level of maturity, so give other people that compassion that you're not getting, but also give yourself that compassion that other people aren't giving you either. Because I'm going off on a little tangent here, but I just truly believe that every human being on this earth wants the same thing. We all want love and we want peace, right? We all want the same thing. And I used to tell my son this almost every day growing up. I would tell, when he would have an issue with somebody or struggle with something, I would always say, life really isn't that complicated. People make it complicated. And I hate to say it, but we are sometimes our own people that make our own lives complicated. And, I will raise my hand on that one. I don't know about anyone else. You can feel free to share in the comments, in the chat. But oftentimes we are the ones, and it's because of the stuff that we have in our head, these things that we tell ourselves that we should this and we should that, or I can, or I can't, or whatever it is. But really, we can. And I don't really believe necessarily in should, unless it's, again, like an ethical, legal, moral situation. But we all want the same thing. So don't make life harder than it already is, because it really doesn't have to be. We just need to give ourselves that grace. So then the next step is really figuring out, as I was starting this section, who you really are. Beyond the I'm a wife, I'm a mother, or if you're a gentleman watching, beyond being a husband, a brother, a whatever. And people often lead with their titles at work as well. And again, that's great. We're excited for you if you're Dr. So-and-so of whatever organization. We're so happy for you. But that does not define who you are. Although in some cases, I suppose it might, because a lot of people do define themselves based on their work. But really, it's about who you are. Who are you? Let me help you out with that if you're not sure. Your core values are one of the biggest indicators of who you truly are. And if you don't know what a core value is, it's the things that are most important to you. And, it's interesting because a couple weeks ago, I was at an event and they wanted everyone to stand up and say, oh, well, Thanksgiving's coming. Say what you're thankful for. And almost every single person, I'm thankful for my husband and for my family. And again, I'm not making fun. I'm thankful for all the people in my life too. But, it's funny that that's what we always say, what we expect people to receive well. Because when it came to me, I was thinking, well, I'm thankful for time. Time is a core value to me because it's probably the most invaluable asset that we have in this human life, because you don't know how much time you have. And every second that goes by, it's gone. You're not getting it back. And you don't know how many more seconds, if you even have seconds, you have in front of you to live. So why not make them the best seconds or minutes, days, hours, months, hopefully years, but time to me is a core value. So yes, I get upset when my time is wasted. And if you're not sure what your core values are, I am actually not saying this to be funny, but I am laughing a little because I was taught that if you want to figure out what your core values are, ask yourself, what pisses you off? Because what pisses you off will clearly tell you what your core value is. And I am I like people to respect my time. I'm respectful. I hope people see that of other people's time. So, what are your core values? Another core value of mine, just to get your minds rolling with this, is truth. Because of, I won't get into my whole life story, but from before I was even born, there were lies about who I was, who my father was, who I was supposed to be. And it just continues. I'm going to be 50 years old in a month, actually a month to the day, I believe, maybe not. But anyway, it's amazing how many lies are out there, or the things that people believe that are not true. And so to me, truth is a core value. I do not tolerate, as a result, any dishonesty or anything that I'm misled about. It's something that's very important to me. So what are your core values? That will tell you who you are. Okay. Another way to figure out who you are your interests, your passions. What are you interested in? Are there any hobbies? I have a friend who she loves going out on bicycle rides. And I'm talking like, she's out for a week and is like, I did 500 miles this week. Like, I don't ever want to be on a bicycle that long. My butt would hurt, but that's her thing. And I love that for her. And that I always see pictures of her on social media with her bicycle is her most precious thing. And I love that. We all have that thing. If it's a hobby, if it's some interest you have, even if it's something you've never done before, but you'd really like to do it, that is still, qualifying as something that says a little bit about who you truly are, your authentic self. Passions, your priorities. What do you prioritize? For me, to give you an example, I am a health nut. I have to, even if I'm sick, if I have a migraine, my husband can vouch for this, I will be on the treadmill for at least 1 hour every morning. I will not look at my phone. I will not look at anything. I will not do anything. Nobody gets breakfast, coffee, nothing until I am on that treadmill. I have a little coffee before I go on, but I'm the exception because I gotta get a little energy there. But I value my health. I value my health so much that I buy mostly organic food and gluten-free and all this dairy-free, all this stuff, because I want my body, this one body I have in this life, to function at, optimal performance. So that's something that is really important to me. But what do you prioritize? For some people, it's time spent with certain people. It's some people prioritize vacations because they love traveling, which I don't hate on that. I love traveling. The other thing you can consider are your strengths and your weaknesses. Those define who you are. We're all different. We're not all going to be good at everything. There are some people that you can say, my gosh, they're really, really good at this. My husband has been a home builder for decades. He can go into any house anywhere. And I'm actually like blown away by the extent of his knowledge and his capabilities and his talent, because he's actually really, really good at like everything house related, so that would be a strength. Now, weaknesses, I'm not picking on my husband. I love him very much, but put him in front of a computer or give him an app on a phone and it's a little sketchy. So, it is for me too, admittedly, but I'm apparently our tech department in our house. So, and that's not saying much. That is also one of my weaknesses. But, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and those, I think, also define very much who we are. So again, figure out who you are, core values, your interests, passions, priorities, strengths, and weaknesses, and then go back to that number one question. Why am I hiding these things? Why am I not letting people see them? Why am I not expressing them outwardly? What am I really, truly afraid of? Which leads to the next step is trusting your worthiness to be who you truly are. Because everybody is imperfect. Everybody is figuring it out. So why we feel that we have to put on a front, sort of craft these identities, these personas to go out in the world. It's like every day is Halloween, and it's silliness. And that is why I so adore and respect people. Like, I keep referring, because this episode is about the first episode I had with Angel Dash. She is she's like iconic to me because I don't know anybody who really epitomizes the idea of being brave enough to be you. She is not shy. If she wants to say a cuss word, she's going to say it. Doesn't matter who's around. If she has an opinion to express or something to assert, she's going to do it. And just look at the way she lives her, what we would call an unconventional life. She doesn't care. She has love in her life. She is happy in her marriage to two people. And God love that. I aspire to be more like that. And I hope that we all do, because what a freeing and liberating feeling to be your authentic self and not constantly have these ideas of, oh, should I, shouldn't I? What will they say? What will they think? Who cares? Who cares? Ugh. Next thing is embrace that uniqueness. I think I already kind of went through that. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind when I talk about embracing how unique we really are, and I think this is important too, because what's unique about us isn't always going to be well received by people. But for me, this brings to mind, ever since I was a little girl, I'm very highly sensitive, like highly, highly sensitive. And my mother used to use that against me, sort of like as an accusation, like I was accused, to the point that I actually talk about this in my second book, not at great depth, but I bring it up. But she would actually, like, if I cried, if I expressed emotions, like, let's say, like, I remember like seventh junior high, broke up with a boy, I was crying, or I was bullied at school, I would cry at home and be upset. I would have emotions about it. My mother would literally take me to the emergency room at the hospital and have me tested for drugs. And so I learned it wasn't okay to feel my feelings. It was bad to be sensitive. It was bad to have emotions. And, at 49 now, my husband is feeling all of my emotions with me because I have finally embraced that. And you know what? I attribute to my husband, honestly. I want to honor him that for once in my life, he was one of the first people to say, I love your sensitivity. That's what makes you you. I wouldn't want you to be any other way. I'm the girl that's going to cry when the dog dies in the movie, or, when a bird is on the ground and it's alive, but it has a broken wing and can't fly. It makes me very, very sad. And I am that girl. And I love that my husband showed me that it's not a bad quality. It maybe was not a good quality to somebody who didn't want me to have emotions or feelings or assert myself about anything, but to the right people, you are just right, but you have to be right with yourself. And then you can accept that love from other people as well. So I encourage you to embrace your uniqueness, because sometimes what you think is a weakness might actually be one of those things that really defines who you are and makes you unique, and maybe even as a strength, sort of superpower. And lastly, give yourself permission to step outside those limitations. Again, going back to Angel Dash, and I say Dash because Dash is actually her last name. She so kindly tells people, Dash is not the little dash we put between words. It is actually her last name, but Angel Dash, she actually will be giving a talk in a summit next March that we are both in, the Women Thrive Summit of 2026 next March. And she has shared that she will be talking about burning the box. And I love that because, yes, burn the box. We are all put in this little box of how other people define us. Other people put these labels on us and decide this is how we should be. This is who we should be. And we jump in those boxes and we stay in there and we suffer and we suppress our feelings about it. Then we're depressed and all the stuff I just mentioned. But how brave are people like Angel? And I think I've stepped out of the box quite a bit. Sometimes you lose everything, and that alone, when you have nothing left to lose, there's no fear anymore because the people are gone. Get the hell out of the box. Forget the box. Forget the labels. Remove all the labels. Just be. Be you. Be who you are. Be in the present moment. Feel everything you feel. Express what you want to express. It's all good. And that's what I hope for every single person who's listening. So one more fact that I'm going to leave you with here, just because I think it's interesting, is the happiest people in the world, and this is according to a study, the happiest people in the world are married men and single women. I could have a whole discussion about that, but let's look at married women. Why are they the unhappiest people, according to an 80-year-long Harvard study? Because we are trying to be everything to everybody. And that leaves us unfulfilled. And us, I don't want to put myself in that category because I feel quite fulfilled and quite happy with my life and my marriage and everything. But unfulfillment, or that feeling of being unfulfilled, is actually the number one reason for divorce, above abuse, above infidelity for married women. And that is why 69% of divorces are initiated by women at the average age of 45. And again, for the reason of being unhappy because of a lack of fulfillment. So I think that really is telling about how we, especially as women, need to honor ourselves and what we want and need so that we feel fulfilled, so that we have great relationships, and that we can be the amazing women that we are. So with that said, I just want to thank you once again for joining us for this episode. I want to thank our sponsor again, Lisa Tickle, and her healing workshop for women. Again, if you didn't catch that QR code and are interested, please message me on any of the social media platforms, direct message me, and I will get you that link. I also want to make one quick announcement, but Shifting Gears, the online course, is officially out. If you go to my website, danasdiaz.com, you can click the link. I have it on a Black Friday special, so you can check that out. It is the first of 3 programs I will be rolling out. The second will be coming at the end of December, but this Jumpstart program will get you going back in the driver's seat, back in the direction that you want to go with your life, and towards that fulfillment that we are all hopefully trying to achieve in life. Next show will be in 2 weeks from today, and I will have the beautiful and lovely Megan Holly, who I absolutely adore, and that episode will be called From What If to Watch Me. Yes, Megan is a confidence coach, so I think that ties right into what we just said, because boy, do we need the confidence to be our authentic selves. So happy Thanksgiving to all the Americans watching. Thank you again for everybody who's joined us, and have a beautiful next 2 weeks until I see you again. Mwah.
Thanks for tuning into Shifting Gears, where transformation isn't just talk, it's a conscious shift into the best and happiest version of you. Until next time, enjoy the open road. And if today's episode inspired you, be sure to like, share, and follow so you never miss what's coming next.